this talk about India becoming the fifth largest economy, or even ambitions to becoming the second largest or the largest economy in the world, have no real meaning if you have a large economy, but you have a larger number of people to sustain on that basis. Then for them, what matters is how much is available per person. And that remains extremely low, and we are very, very, very far from achieving anything close to a developed status. Okay, the fact that unemployment levels in India not only remain high but often show a tendency of increasing is not particularly surprising, given the fact that the level of economic activity in India, even today, is not very, in per capita terms, not very different from what it was in 2019-20, meaning that the impact of the COVID-related and the lockdown-related disruptions in the economy. From that disruption, the economy has not yet recovered, even to be on a trend of growth. So if you actually think about it, it's effectively as if the economy hasn't grown in the last 3 years. That's the position we are in today. And if therefore the unemployment numbers are currently high, that by itself would not be surprising. But this unemployment problem is, of course, part of a problem with a longer history, because in India, the unemployment rate does not always capture the severity of the problem of employment. If you look at the number of people or the proportion of the population which is employed, and you add to that the proportion of the population which is deemed unemployed, that still leaves a very large section of the population in the working age group, which are in neither category. That is, we have a problem of inadequate employment, because of which large number of people are not even there in the market looking for employment. And therefore, they are not deemed to be unemployed, because by definition, unemployed are those who are looking for work but can't find. If you look at India's proportion of the Indian population that is employed and compare with China, you find that, or with many other Asian countries, you find that India is way behind in terms of the proportion of population which is employed. So the average Indian household suffers from the fact that one or more members of the household do not get work which generates an income. The existence of vast amounts of unemployment also means that those who do get work, or those who do get employed, earn very little from this employment. So the wages typically that people who work in India get are extremely low, and they tend to remain low because you're always in a situation where there are far more people to work, who are seeking work, than the actual work that is available. And in general, this condition means that in any employment where there's an employer-employee relationships, the employers have significant leverage over the employees because of the very desperate situation in which most employees are. So it has also implications for the nature of work, the intensity of work, the oppressive nature of that work. All of that, the magnitude of all these problems increases in Indian employment. So work or employment in India for most people is either not available and certainly not very rewarding in any sense of the term. The employment problem also, however, is both a reflection as well as a cause of larger problems of India's economic trajectory. The fact that such a large number of people are unemployed, and the fact that those who are employed can earn very little and there's no process of increase in the wages, that means that large sections of the Indian population are condemned to a low income, and because of which the potential market that the large Indian population can provide for a process of growth of production, that particular market doesn't exist, it is not able to grow, and excessive reliance on the market created by a small section of the population, which is able to benefit from the fact that wages are stagnating, because that means all growth benefit accrues to the small percentage of the population which owns the assets. So the increased inequalities that we have seen are also reflections of this, and this increased inequality has meant that the process of expanding productive activities started facing problems in terms of an inadequate demand or inadequate market for which could help sustain such a process of expansion. And that in turn then means the employment problem becomes worse, because in an economy where people have find work when there is demand for their labor from others. If economic activities are not able to expand adequately, then you get a situation where employment is also hit adversely. So it becomes a vicious cycle in which the high levels of unemployment generate tendencies which tend to keep the levels of employment low. And unless there is some intervention to address this problem, to expand unemployment, to expand the incomes accruing to 90% of the Indian population, this vicious cycle is something that we cannot break out of. Unfortunately, there is no attempt to address this problem at its root, and all attempts are being made simply to create more benefits for those who've already benefited from the growth process, and induce them to invest and expand economic activities. But if there is no addressing of this fundamental constraint of demand or market, there is no way that this particular problem can be got out of. So we are sinking into a deeper and deeper hole as far as the unemployment problem is concerned. Government, unfortunately, seems to be more preoccupied with reducing taxes, reducing expenditures, reducing its deficits, rather than stepping up to play the role of the exogenous element which can enter into that process and break this vicious circle. So if this vicious circle has to be broken, then expanding employment, expanding the scope for income earning opportunities for the large majority of the population which has to work for a living has to be the priority. And for that purpose, mobilization of resources through taxation and stepping up of public expenditure are extremely important. Well, as far as this fifth largest economy in the world of etc. is concerned, look, we have the second largest population in the world after China, and we are almost come very close to China's population. And the next country in the list is less than a quarter of the Indian population. So the fact that you have a large economy, when you compare across countries, that India has a large economy is not particularly surprising. But you compare the size of the Indian economy relative to its own population, which is you look at per capita GDP or per capita income, then India's ranking in the world drops significantly. So we are categorized by the World Bank as a lower middle income country. And we are in the bottom half of the lower middle income group. Above us are upper middle income and high income countries, and below us are a handful of countries which are still categorized as low income countries. So even within the lower middle income group, there are several countries which are above us. We are in the bottom half of the lower middle income. So this talk about India becoming the fifth largest economy, or even ambitions to becoming the second largest or the largest economy in the world, have no real meaning unless you look at it in relation to the size of your population. Because if you have a large economy, but you have a larger number of people to sustain on that basis, then for them, what matters is how much is available per person. And that remains extremely low. And we are very, very, very far from achieving anything close to a developed status. We are way below the world average at the moment, and typical rich country in the world is 3 times the world average, whereas India is not even the best indicators that you terms on which you can compare. Uh, Even on that, India is 30% of the world's average. Even if you say compare with China, India's per capita income is significantly below that of China. China not only produces more, significantly more than India, it employs 65% of its population in that process. India employs only 46% of its population in producing what it. So the fact that we have low employment, smaller proportion of our population is employed, also means that you're wasting the capacity that you have to produce. This is a productive force, a potentially productive force that is being wasted simply because your economic arrangements are such that you're not able to get them into production. So you look at them as people who have to be provided for, but they are also people who can produce what is required to provide them with. It's the problem is on your arrangements, in your policies, that you are not able to make use of them.